Hi everyone, welcome to VRC with Gaurav. In this video, we will discuss passage number 70 from the book RC 99. Before we start off, I would like to mention that this video could go longer than other videos where we discuss passages from the same book because this passage has a fair amount of depth and detail to it, and the questions are also challenging enough. So, in order to do justice to the passage, its explanation, and also discussing the questions comprehensively, I would like to compromise the length to which this video goes. Okay. So, starting off, I generally tend to give a glossary before any passage, highlighting the important words and the meanings of which the author which the aspirant can use to crack the passage properly. This passage is actually littered with a lot of unusual or even a bit of fancy vocab. And it is one of those cases where understanding those fancy words is very crucial to cracking the passage properly. So, as a thumb rule, I generally don't spend time on glossary, but here I would like to recommend that the person, anybody, if you are watching this video, if you are aspiring to crack this passage properly, I would recommend that you understand the meaning of rhetoric very well. I've highlighted over here, I've explained it, that it means deploying language in a way which is very persuasive. सुनने में आपको बहुत अच्छा लगेगा. If it is a written word, बहुत अच्छा लगता है पढ़ने में. ऐसा लगता है भाई क्या बोला है, बहुत बढ़िया बात, कितना अच्छा बोलता है. Very persuasive, very convincing words. Maybe he will use poetry here and there. हम देखते हैं ना कुछ लोग जो शायद बहुत अच्छा शेरो शायरी करके आपको खुद की बात मनाते हैं वगैरह. तो that is called as very persuasive speaking. But the problem with rhetoric is that it has persuasive speaking, but there is an important caveat that it is often lacking in sincerity, often lacking in meaningful content. मतलब कि वो थोड़ी सी ब्लैंड, थोड़ी शैलो टाइप की कमेंट्री रहेगी जो आपको सुनने में बहुत अच्छी लगती है, बट खास दम वाली बात नहीं होती. You won't find a lot of depth in what the speaker, in what the author is putting forth. Generally, this word rhetoric is deployed, at least in Indian context, with respect to politicians' के speeches, वो generally जो खुद के rallies वगैरह में. What you will find in there is that they deploy a lot of taunts with respect to their political rivals. They might say one or two amusing thing to which the audience goes into laughter or claps or something like that. But as such, political rallies are not known for in-depth speeches. Okay, so in those speeches, what any decent politician does is he or she deploys rhetoric. Okay, that is the meaning of this word, and it's very important to understanding the passage because it's the central part of the entire discussion which the author wants to do here. Okay, he has taken rhetoric, the setting is ancient Greece, and he is giving us his opinions about what was the situation at the time and whether he likes it or not. Okay, so moving to the passage, let's start from paragraph 1. What does the author say in the first para? That as far as ancient Greece was concerned, oratory was a very important part of their lives. As far as you are somebody aspiring to move up the social ladder or maybe even the maybe the corporate ladder, I'm doing some kind of guesswork here. But as far as moving up the ladder, moving up their career is concerned, oratory was very important. What is meant by oratory? Public speaking. Okay. And of course, the author is saying that somebody's oratory would be a public affair there. Everybody can see it because there weren't any other fancy elements to help a person. Okay. So, what is happening with respect to ancient Greece, the author says that it was not enough. Okay. Author is saying it would be naive to expect. Okay. Whenever somebody says naive to expect, मतलब author is saying कि ये गलती में मत गिर जाना आपने, ये misunderstanding मत कर लेना. कैसी? That mere reasonableness or inherently good case would lead to a satisfactory appeal. Important opinion coming in from the author. I would like to highlight it. Author is saying कि it was not enough कि आपके स्पीच में, आपके आर्ग्यूमेंट में बहुत अच्छा लॉजिक रहे या फिर बहुत अच्छी डेप्थ रहे. ना ना, it was very important, rather even becoming more important was कि आपके डिलीवरी में अपील रहे, आपके डिलीवरी में there should be rhetoric, okay, that persuasiveness, that convincing power and tone. Okay, so Ancient Greece में it was assumed, it was expected that you can train yourself in this persuasive nature, persuasive ability. So that is why rhetoric, the ability to speak something in a very persuasive manner, was a very important part of their entire social system. All right. Okay. So moving ahead, the second para, what the author says here is that in time it also became very apparent that if you are somebody speaking with a lot of rhetoric, a lot of persuasion power, पक्का आप में कुछ गड़बड़ है. Okay. Rather, in the court of laws, it was even expected that the person who is speaking with more persuasiveness, with more mithi mithas, that guy is actually the guilty one. That guy is actually on the wrong side of the law. It was expected like that. Okay, it was criticism that was presented, and even the jury was aware about it. The author is saying, even the jury was aware of it. In Greece, juries, of course, were familiar with this type. Okay, pretty surprising narrative. But even then, here comes the author's concession once again at the end. Even then, it was expected that both sides, both parties have fairly persuasive commentary, fairly persuasive approach deployed in order to make their case. The last sentence over here, persuasive oratory, nothing but rhetoric. It was certainly one of the pressures that was effective in an Athenian law court. Okay, Athenian derived from Athens. Okay, part of ancient Greece. Okay, all right. Then in the third and fourth para, the author starts with his delivery, with his opinions regarding the entire. He says कि भाई देखो एक point आ गया जहां पे people started focusing more on the manner of speaking, more on rhetoric rather than the matter, rather than the content. Okay, there was a strong desire there was a strong inclination towards showmanship, and the author says कि ये exact turning point कब आया ये हमें नहीं पता. Okay, it's not easy to define the point at which this happened, but it happened. And by the time of fourth and later centuries, already ये बात हो चुकी थी that people were now more preoccupied with style than substance. And in this, the author has also found a proper Balika Bakra. He's saying Isocrates was one of the most influential in that. He's also mentioning Demosthenes, blah, blah, blah. So Isocrates and Demosthenes are just showpieces here, exhibits to what the author is trying to convince you. He's saying कि एक point आया society में जब persuasive style के ऊपर ज्यादा focus है, बंदा बोल क्या रहा है, content क्या है उसके बोलने का, उस पे ज्यादा ध्यान. And regarding this, the author is really not happy. He's very upset about it. Why? Because clear cut, he's saying this line. Exaltation of virtuosity did palpable harm. Okay. So what does exaltation of virtuosity means? I'll plot it once again before you, even though we have taken a look at it in the glossary section. Persuasion, the style of persuasion, okay, that is being referred to as virtuosity. Ideally speaking, virtuosity means skill in some art, okay, and exaltation meaning you are very happy about something, you even celebrate something. So effectively, exaltation of virtuosity in the context of this passage amounts to celebration of rhetoric, celebration of persuasive speech. Okay. But this is the meaning with respect to this passage only. Please keep that in mind. Virtuosity as such is a very broad term. It means being skilled in a particular art. And the thing that we're discussing in this passage, the art that is in the focus is rhetoric, persuasive speaking. That's why exaltation of virtuosity implies celebration of persuasive speaking. Author says ये जो बढ़ावा मिला persuasive speaking को, इसकी वजह से नुकसान हुआ है समाज को. Okay, it did really noticeable harm to the society. Why so? Why the author is saying this? अब यहाँ पर आता है आपका थोड़ा सा inference drawing ability. If the author says that यार I am not happy कि क्या लोग सब style showmanship में waste हो रहे हैं, content के ऊपर तो ध्यान ही नहीं है. So from this you should be able to derive a very clear-cut, straightforward idea. The author is more inclined towards substance and depth rather than showmanship. He is not very happy or eager about that scene. ठीक है? And in the last para, the author is rounding off his opinion. He's saying that as time passed by, this virtuosity, this skill of persuasive speaking it started getting more importance. Okay. And as long as Greece was a free state, it was a collection of city states, as long as their political system was the way it was, तो उसके upside भी था, downside भी था. Upside was it that every important aspect of public life was publicly debated, discussed, in a way, a sign of true democracy. But the downside of it was this shallowness. Okay. जो आपकी परसुएसिव स्पीकिंग में दिखता है, जहाँ पे लोग स्टाइल और शोमैनशिप पे फोकस करते हैं बट नॉट फोकसिंग ऑन द कंटेंट. दैट इज अ पोटेंशियल डाउनसाइड ऑफ द ग्रीक्स का एंशिएंट सिस्टम. दैट इज व्हाट द ऑथर सेज. ठीक है. सो इफेक्टिवली राउंडिंग अप द पैसेज इन अ कपल ऑफ सेंटेंस, ऑथर सेज इन एंशिएंट ग्रीस बोलने चलने का स्टाइल एटलीस्ट इन पब्लिक स्पीकिंग was very important. If you are very persuasive, if you can deploy rhetoric smartly, you can aspire to move up the social ladder. And regarding this, the author is not happy. Author is saying ये क्या घटिया बात है, इससे तो नुकसान हुआ है समाज का. लोग कंटेंट पे नहीं, शोमैनशिप पे, स्टाइल पे फोकस करते हैं. ठीक है. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the questions. The questions framed are really, really good. If I were to round off this passage in a very colloquial term, I would say छोटा पैकेट बड़ा धमाका टाइप. बहुत सॉलिड कंटेंट है और क्वेश्चंस भी बहुत अच्छे बनाए. The first question is, if the author of passage traveled to a political convention and he sees various candidates speaking, so he would have the highest regard for. Okay, to have regards for somebody means to have the greatest amount of respect here. Okay, greatest amount of appreciation, blah blah blah. तो ऑफ कोर्स हमने देख चुके हैं, ऑथर इज नॉट समबडी जिसको रेटोरिक पसंद है. ही इज अ sort of old school guy who wants more preference given to substance, to content, rather than the showmanship, the style. That is why the answer here is clear cut answer option C. Here we did not deploy even option elimination. The answer C stands out very starkly compared to the other four. Option C says relies on facts and reason rather than on rhetorical devices. Okay. So it means the speaker who is relying more on content and rationality, he will have the author's respect. Okay. So one of those rare cases where you can go ahead and mark C without any qualms or having to weigh one option against the other. B comes slightly close to being the answer, because here it is saying understood that the speaker understood that rhetoric serves an aesthetic as well as a practical purpose. अच्छा ठीक है. तो ये वो सिचुएशन है ना जहाँ पे ऑप्शन सी अगर ना हो तो मे बी वी कुड देन गो फॉर ऑप्शन बी. बट एज सच इफ यू कंपेयर बी एंड सी, जहाँ पे बी बोल रहा है कि हाँ द स्पीकर हैज प्रैक्टिकल आउटलुक रिगार्डिंग रेटोरिक, कि भाई इतना इतना काम में आता है, ऐसे ऐसी उसकी यूटिलिटी है. ओके, बट the author is, as I explained, old school in this manner. He any day he would prefer content over style. वो C दिखाता है आपको, इसलिए it takes the cake here. Okay. So I hope that this question is clear to you. We'll move on to the next one now. Good question. Really nice. What does it say? कि historians agree करते हैं एक बात पे. क्या चीज? That today if you have a politician running for public office, seeking some kind of election, in modern America they make far fewer speeches. बहुत कम speeches देते हैं compared to a guy, let's say, in ancient Greece. तो author would most likely explain this by. तो ये तो बहुत सीधी सी बात है. अभी हमने देखा author is not happy with स्टाइल मारना, शो ऑफ करना, showing rhetoric, deploying rhetoric, making speeches to woo the audience and all. So ideally you can assume here, or you can say with a lot of confidence, कि author यहाँ पर historians के साइड से बहुत खुश हो जाएगा वो जैसे ये इंफॉर्मेशन आप ऑथर को दोगे. और अब क्वेश्चन पूछता है कि ऑथर ये स्टेटमेंट को डिफेंड कैसे करेगा, ये स्टेटमेंट के बारे में सपोर्टिंग कैसे करेगा. ठीक है. So in this you can approach it with option elimination. You should throw out option E immediately if this is the case that we have discussed. Why? Because E is saying कि भाई अमेरिका और ग्रीस में ना ज्यादा फर्क नहीं है. Hell no. Author wants to show a lot of good difference between अमेरिका एंड ग्रीस, तभी जाकर एक्सप्लेन होगा ना किसी तरीके से कि भाई ग्रीस में जहाँ स्पीच मेकिंग इतनी इंपॉर्टेंट थी और मॉडर्न अमेरिका में तो हम तो स्पीच ही नहीं दे रहे या फिर बहुत कम दे रहे हैं कंपैरेटिवली. तो व्हाई इज दैट? देयर हैज टू बी some kind of tangible difference between ancient Greece and modern America. And option E is flying in the face of author. At modern America and ग्रीस में यार फर्क नहीं है, बहुत सेम. अगर सेम है तो फिर स्पीचेस कम क्यों दी जा रही है? ग्रीस में तो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है स्पीच देना. तो ऑप्शन ई आउट. Option C is even worse. Okay. What does it say? Option C, third one. Modern audiences are easier to persuade through rhetoric as compared to the Greek audiences. Oh my God. This shows that modern America is sort of, in a way, even worse than people from ancient Greece. In the sense that they get swayed by a very persuasive, by a very smooth talker. No, that should not be the case. If C becomes true, it would imply that politicians today in modern America end up giving even more speeches compared to Greece. क्योंकि आप जितने स्पीच दोगे उतना आप जनता को पटा लोगे अपने तरफ से. तो C is going wrong. Option D takes us nowhere. Why? Because it's implying कि भाई देखो, today's politicians are taking it a bit easy with respect to speech making compared to ancient Greece. Okay, but why? That's the question. We want to explain this phenomenon. So option D is actually doing nothing but rephrasing the question itself and getting away with it. So not cool, not cool there. Option A and B are good candidates here. Why? Because they are showing speeches ka limited utility. A is saying speeches are now only of limited use in the abrupt vicissitudes of politics. Okay, they have deployed some fancy word here. Vicissitudes को आप समझ सकते हो, unpleasant changes, unpleasant transformation. Okay, all right. So ऑप्शन ए सेइंग स्पीच का अब काफी कम यूज आता है इन पॉलिटिकल सिचुएशन जहाँ पे बहुत रैपिड अनप्लेजेंट चेंजेस आ जाते हैं. ओके, ठीक है, कम यूज है इसलिए शायद कम दे रहे होंगे पॉलिटिशियन स्पीचेस. आफ्टर रीडिंग ए यू आर लाइक ओके, ठीक है, लेट्स सी व्हाट बी हैज टू ऑफर. बी मच मोर, मच बेटर राउंडेड देन ए. व्हाई? बिकॉज बी इज सेइंग कि आज के पॉलिटिशियन को सिर्फ स्पीचेस पर रिलाय नहीं करना है. Meaning that if a politician wants to make his mark, he has other instruments at his disposal which he can use to make a mark in the public, to make a name for himself. उसको स्पीच देकर जरूरी नहीं है काम करना, which is going exact opposite to what the author has said over here in this last paragraph, that rhetoric was a necessary preparation for public life. Meaning thereby कि एंशियंट ग्रीस में एक पॉलिटिशियन के पास में परसुएसिव स्पीच मेकिंग के लिए ज्यादा अल्टरनेटिव्स नहीं थे. आप पब्लिक फिगर हो, आप एक पॉलिटिशियन हो, स्पीचेस तो देना आना ही आना चाहिए. बट इफ ऑप्शन बी बिकम्स ट्रू, इट इज सेइंग कि नहीं भाई, ठीक है, आज के अमेरिका में थिंग्स आर अ बिट डिफरेंट. यू कैन गेट अवे बाय नॉट मेकिंग अ लॉट ऑफ फैंसी स्पीचेस, व्हिच इज गुड. एंड दैट इज व्हाई it ideally should turn out that people today give far fewer speeches. So B is doing a really good job at showing a strong distinction between ancient Greece and modern America. And hence that is why it takes the cake here. Option B, far well rounded as compared to A. Okay, so I hope that you have understood this question properly. Very good question. I actually liked it a lot. Okay, so now that we are done with this, let's move on to the next question. Okay, please bear with me with this question. Assumption questions tend to be comparatively tougher than your usual other regular questions. I personally find assumption questions the most challenging out of all critical reasoning ones. Even strength and weaken are easier to crack compared to assumption. That is my opinion. It can change from person to person. I'm just giving you my experience so far. Now, this question itself has a lot of inversion deployed here. Allow me to pull it apart for you and put it together in a way which you can understand. The question is saying assumption है. अच्छा, किस में है? इस स्टेटमेंट में है. कौन से स्टेटमेंट में? There is an assumption in the statement. What is the statement? Let's highlight it. What? The exaltation of virtuosity, it was not due to Isocrates, but because public display was normal in a world that talked far more than it read. अच्छा जी, इतना बड़ा स्टेटमेंट है, और इस स्टेटमेंट में अजम्पशन है, ऑथर कहता है, क्वेश्चन सेटर कहता है, एंड यू हैव टू फाइंड अजम्पशन क्या है. ठीक है, दिस इज द क्वेश्चन. द हाइलाइटेड येलोइश पार्ट इज द स्टेटमेंट एंड यू हैव टू फाइंड द अजम्पशन इन दिस स्टेटमेंट. So understand, let's try to understand what this highlighted statement actually means. It is saying कि देखो यार, जो सेलिब्रेशन हुआ ना परसुएसिव स्पीकिंग का ग्रीस में, उसका ब्लेम तुम आइसोक्रेटिस पे मत डालो. ओके, क्योंकि पब्लिक डिस्प्ले, शोमैनशिप, बेसिकली हम जो कहते हैं ना शो शराबा, ये नॉर्मल है भाई एक समाज में, ऐसी दुनिया में जहां पे जनता बोलती ज्यादा है, पढ़ाई कम करती. इन अ वे, ऑथर इज इंडल्जिंग इन काफी हैवी टॉन्टिंग यहाँ पर. ही सेइंग कि एंशिएंट ग्रीस में द पब्लिक और द सिस्टम वाज अ बिट शैलो. Okay, they did not bother themselves with reading, developing depth in their thought process, but rather were more concerned, more swayed by showmanship, public display of your talent and all. तो ये नॉर्मल था उस दुनिया में. तो जहां पब्लिक डिस्प्ले नॉर्मल है, ऑथर सेज, वहां पर exaltation of virtuosity, celebration of showmanship, celebration of persuasive speaking तो होना ही है. तो ये स्टेटमेंट में assumption क्या है, आपको ये ढूंढना है. Okay, your job is to connect celebration of virtuosity, celebration of skill in some art with public display. कि ऐसा क्या है that showing off your something and that good skill getting celebrated in public life, इनको जोड़ने के लिए आपको काम करना है. Celebration of skill and public show off being normal, ये दो situations को connect करने वाला you need some statement. Okay. So ideally speaking, I should walk you through all the 5 options, do option elimination with the help of negation test and all, but that runs the risk of the video going out of control. Okay, assumption question can take a lot of time. So to keep things brief for the sake of brevity, I will tell you that options A, D, and E can be kicked out really confidently. B and C are fairly good enough contestants for being the answer. Okay, so with that in mind, after reading option C, there is a strong inclination to select it as the assumption. But here is the twist in the tail. Option C is actually a really good, sufficient condition, but unfortunately, it is not necessary. क्या कहता है ऑप्शन सी? कि ग्रीक्स लोग ना सेलिब्रेशन करते थे स्किल का, नॉट जस्ट इन स्पीकिंग एंड ऑल, बट ऑल्सो विद रिस्पेक्ट टू आर्ट एंड आर्किटेक्चर. सो इन अ वे ऑप्शन सी इज इम्प्लाइंग कि आप पेंटिंग देख लो, आप दूसरे स्कल्पचर वगैरह बनाने वाला सीन देख लो, या फिर आर्किटेक्चर मेकिंग बिल्डिंग्स देख लो, तो वहां भी शो ऑफ का इंक्लिनेशन बहुत ज्यादा था. एंड ग्रीस used to do that. It used to do that show off. It used to celebrate this skill and style. So if C becomes true, then you can say कि हाँ फिर तो बट नेचुरल है कि as far as public speaking is concerned, वो उसके भी public display का बहुत celebration होगा. So yes, we find a good link. But that is where the key lies, that even if you negate C, even if you insert a not here, even if you insert a not like this here, even then the argument can survive. Not C क्या कहता है कि ग्रीक लोग अपने आर्ट और आर्किटेक्चर में शो ऑफ नहीं करते थे. They would not celebrate show off in their art and architecture. What does that mean? कि सिर्फ पब्लिक स्पीकिंग में शो ऑफ को सेलिब्रेट किया जा रहा है. ओके, ओके. सो इन अ वे, इफ यू टेक अवे सी फ्रॉम द इक्वेशन, it does not do harm to the argument. If C is present, it supports the statement, it supports the author's argument in the question. So ideally speaking, C is not an assumption, it is a supporting statement. It is a good, sufficient condition, but not at all necessary. Negation test, please read up on that, please go through our videos on it. कि assumption में जो हम negation test deploy करते हैं, what it does is when you negate the correct answer, it will kill the argument immediately. Okay, and that is what happens with option B. what happens with option B is that if you negate it, what does it mean? If you negate B, let's say not B, the excessive concern with style is not bound to arise in the world. मतलब कि showmanship का आगे आना, showmanship का celebration जरूरी नहीं है public display से जुड़ा होता है. Then it damages this argument. Why? Because we want a really good connection between these two: public display, public show off, and celebration of skill. ओके, बट अगर आप नॉट बी कर दो तो इट सेज कि इन दोनों में ना जरूरी नहीं है संबंध होना. बाप रे. फिर अगर ऐसा सही हो गया, नॉट बी अगर सच हो गया, तो फिर ब्रो, हाउ विल वी एक्सप्लेन व्हाट इज हैपनिंग इन ग्रीस? व्हाई वाज rhetoric celebrated? Why was rhetoric normal in a public display fashion? So somewhere not B is raising very serious questions regarding the statement, even if it does not kill the argument completely. That is why out of the given statements, option B becomes the answer. As such, I would like to give an additional commentary from my end. This question was really a tough nut to crack. Okay, so handle your assumption questions always with a lot of care. If the question has been made with a lot of due care and diligence, you will have a situation where you end up getting confused between two options and not able to weasel your way out with a very confident mind if you are a regular average aspirant for VARC. So in that case, I would recommend, if your exam has negative marking like we have in CAT, so please try to not fall in the trap for these questions. It would be much smarter to give questions of assumption of wide berth. Okay, I am going as far as suggesting that it might be a good idea to skip assumption questions if they come for passages like this, if they are worded this smartly. Okay, so I hope that you understood all these three questions properly. If you have any other kind of doubt, please drop them in the comment section. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.